After explicating the prompt, you want to develop your thesis statement based on the motif and theme. A good thesis statement ties the microcosm of the novel to the macrocosm of humanity. Another good thing to consider about a thesis statement is that you want to, for the AP Literature test, you want to make sure that your thesis statement is analyzing author style, tone, and purpose. Just a reminder, author style focuses on the author's use of rhetorical devices and literary elements. The author's tone is the attitude towards the motif, so you want to use one of our tone verbs that we talked about in class. And author purpose is the author's theme or observation about what's going on in the world. For To Kill a Mockingbird, I'm listing 3 different examples of thesis statements. What I'd like you to do is to take a minute and read through them, and I want you to underline or highlight which one has author style, tone, and purpose, ties the micro to the macro, and is on prompt. First example, prejudice is evident in To Kill a Mockingbird. The second example, in To Kill a Mockingbird, Harper Lee deconstructs the devastating effects prejudice brings to a small Alabama town through multiple rhetorical devices. And the third thesis, through the eyes of a child in the novel To Kill a Mockingbird, Harper Lee decries the ignorance of society, damming the rivers of humanity in a small Alabama town, ultimately exalting the empathy and integrity necessary to burst the levees of prejudice and hatred. I'm hoping, after looking at the first one, that it immediately came into your mind that it was not necessarily on prompt because it didn't answer the implicit and explicit questions of the prompt. The second thesis statement does answer the implicit questions because it identifies the rhetorical devices, although it doesn't narrow them, and it identifies the social tradition or attitude that Harper Lee hopes to change. The question is, though, how does Harper Lee change it? And we don't really necessarily, or how effective it is, and we don't necessarily see that as clearly in that example. If I look in the third one, while it doesn't say multiple rhetorical devices, it does say through the eyes of a child, which is an example of a rhetorical device, aka narrative voice. Now, it's specific to the microcosm of To Kill a Mockingbird. It's not a general, but it doesn't have to be because we're talking about the author's style at this point. The author tone is clearly identified when we look at the tone verb decries and we look at the tone verb exalting. We see what observation that she's making when she talks about the ignorance of society damming the rivers of humanity, and we talk about the empathy and integrity necessary to burst the levees of prejudice and hatred. There's one weakness in this thesis. Do you know what it is? It's missing a qualifier. In order to correct that, I could add that is often necessary to burst the levees of prejudice. Or I could change this to that frequently dams the rivers of humanity. Either way would be acceptable. It would be up to your personal preference. My personal preference would be to change that is often necessary.